Good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm Mark Lemmert, and today I'm going to be sharing some of the new content that my teammates and I at 6502 Workshop have created for our Apple II Sword and Sorcery RPG, Nox Archaist, and doing that at the same time while demonstrating techniques for troubleshooting intermittent assembly language bugs using time travel in the Micro M8 emulator, and if I'm really feeling up to it, maybe I'll throw in some juggling and card tricks at the same time. See what we can do here. Okay, so let's talk about bugs. As many of us know, intermittent bugs are among some of the most difficult bugs to solve. That's because it's so hard to, or can be so hard to reproduce the conditions that trigger the bug. For example, in a role-playing game, an intermittent bug might only occur if there's a wizard on the screen who happens to be in tile grid position 10, 10, and maybe only if the Z key was pressed, but only if the A key was pressed just before the Z key were pressed. I mean, it can get really crazy like that. It's just its own special realm of insanity to torture developers. The only thing worse, I think, is the dreaded Heisen bug, which disappears when you try to isolate it. It's really creepy. I don't even like to think about it. So I have personally spent full work days, or the equivalent thereof, chasing after and solving intermittent bugs until time travel in emulator form was available in Micromate. So what time travel does is it periodically records the machine state, either periodically or actually on every CPU clock cycle if it's set for that mode, which is the mode you need for debugging. And it stores those machine states in a recording. You know, basically think like, you know, it's a VCR. Well, if we're going to think retro about it, VCR, or think recording on your iPhone, as you prefer. But what you can do is rewind the recording and go back to a previous point in time in the execution of your program or of your game session from the perspective of the player of a game. And that's incredibly useful when it comes to intermittent bugs because you can rewind the recording to a point just before or roughly before an intermittent bug occurred. And as a result, there's no guessing on what keys did you press to trigger the bug, or you know what mobs were on screen or NPCs were on screen. None of that is left to guessing because that's all baked into the recording. And as a result, rather than potentially full work days going into solving intermittent bugs, you know, even some of the most difficult ones I've been able to solve in a few hours or less using time travel and these techniques. And it looks like actually there's an intermittent bug in the slideshow. I better get on that. Always have to throw in one corny joke in all my sessions. It's become a tradition. So Micromate was developed by April and Melody at Paleotronic. And last year they came from Australia here to KansasFest. And as some of you may remember, they gave a session talking about talking about Micromate's capability to integrate modern graphics with Apple II graphics within the emulator screen, which was some pretty phenomenal stuff. They didn't mention time travel once. And then, later on in the week, I think over lunch, dinner, something, casually came up in conversation. And I was like, what? You have time travel? I mean, seriously, I was like the first accountant to see VisiCalc, who pretty much passed out in shock over the magnitude of what it meant, you know, for day-to-day work. Because at that point, you know, I'd been working on Nox Arcaist for several years, troubleshooting intermittent bugs through the tedious and arduous method of the past, what is now the past. So Needless to say, I was really excited about its potential for debugging, and actually had been excited about its potential for debugging since I had first seen time travel demonstrated by Tom Phelps. I believe it was roughly 2 years ago in his AIEE emulator. And I want to give a big shout out, here to Tom for everything he did and is doing in pioneering the technology. And from what he tells me, AIEE is going to be worth the wait for when he puts it out available publicly. So thank you, Tom. Okay, let's get started with the main event here. We'll get Nox Arcaist booted up in Micromate. Got our double high-res splash screen there that we showed last year, talked about the technology about. It's basically just a few art tweaks there since last time. We made the eyes a bit more fiery. Or actually, it's more a case of we lost the data for some of the fire in the eyes, and I didn't even realize it until our artist and programmer who did some of the work on it got together and figured that out, and I was like, oh wow, they were supposed to be like this. This looks awesome. Anyway, let's get booted up. Okay, so we got some new stuff here right away on the screen. We now have ruins of ancient castles and keeps in Nox Arcaist. It's basically a style of dungeon in the game. There's also subterranean style dungeons, and a third dungeon style which we haven't revealed yet. And we've also added a stylish white font, what we hope is stylish anyway, which is on display here. And that was just in the last couple of weeks that got put in. So let's go ahead and enter this ruin. So we demonstrated our Mockingboard driver last year, and we've refined the implementation and added more music. We've got, I believe it's around 12 tracks in total, and they play in 10 to 20 second bursts when you enter a different location, like a town, castle, dungeon, or combat. Basically like when the scene changes, it gives that 10 to 20 second burst to kind of set the tone. Different approach than what I typically had seen in 8-bit RPGs, and it's something that we're going to kind of pioneer the style and just see how it goes. So from here, I'm actually going to turn off music so we can focus on the debugging, but I was actually going to mention one more thing with the art. So each map type in Nox Arcaist, towns, castles, dungeons, ruins, etc., has its own 256 tile set. So we're pushing around 1,000 tiles in total in the game. The ruin tile set that we see here was Bill Geege, our artist, started out creating that by making a copy of the castle tile set, and then just having a blast punching holes in the walls and snapping chains on the drawbridge, and basically ruining the place. So as we walk through looking for bugs, we'll get to see more of the ruins artwork as well. And let's get to that. We'll go find our bug. So in combat, I'm just going to hit escape to abort out of combat today for expediency. That's a playtest key. You won't be so lucky in the actual game. You will get to beep if you press escape. Okay, there's our bug. We got all these question marks at the bottom of the screen, and the game's unresponsive to key presses at this point, and this immediately smells like an intermittent bug to me, because it's happening, seems to be happening when entering combat, but it didn't happen the first time we entered in combat. It happened the second time. So does it happen every 2 times, every 10 times? That's the intermittent bugs. Mileage will vary as to exactly how intermittent they are. So we actually, I did not have time travel enabled when this occurred, and the reason is because Micromate will slow down a bit when time travel is on, and as a result, my approach is when playtesting is I just playtest, and every once in a while when I encounter an intermittent bug, then I'll go back, turn time travel on, reproduce the bug, and then troubleshoot from there. Most intermittent bugs, I found I can reproduce in 5 minutes or so. I've only had a few that were, like they only occurred once a week or something crazy like that. Clearly, this is not ideal. Really the holy grail here would be you have time travel on all the time. You have your beta testers with time travel on all the time, and they hit a bug, they just send you a copy of the recording file. That's the future. This is a rough state of time travel implementation. And from a developer perspective, though, it's still a usable tool to save a whole bunch of time. So one of my hopes today for anybody that is interested in using time travel for development is you can refer back to this video and observe exactly what I did, exactly what buttons I clicked, because there's still polishing going on with the user interface, and if you click the wrong thing, it will fail silently, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give you the formula here today, so to speak, on how to do it. So we'll start out here by rebooting the emulator. And when we get booted up, we'll go through the process to enable time travel. Okay, in Micromate, enter the debugger as Control-Shift-B, B for bugger. Then go to Settings, click Record All CPU Changes, and click Submit, and that's really important so that it's doing a machine state on every clock cycle and not just periodically, which you have to do in order for breakpoints to be honored, which we'll get into here shortly. Then click this recording button. It's off by grade, off by default. Click that so that it turns on. Then click the continue button here to resume your program operation. Then go back to the Micromate application window. And this light in the upper right-hand corner, that signifies that the recording is on, the time travel recording is on. So now basically the mission here is to reproduce the bug again. Didn't happen in the first combat, just like before. Didn't happen in the second combat this time, though it did last time. I'm actually noticing the response rate here is a lot better than it was. I'm not seeing that so much of that sluggishness. Micromate has auto updates. When you launch the application, it'll automatically update. So April might have done some improvements on that just recently. So I'll have to try that again as far as like using time travel all the time rather than just selectively. Okay, there's our bug again. So we're return to the debugger, and we need to click pause, which I can't see on my shrunken screen here. Oh boy. To the right? Yeah, I'll have to look at the big screen. There we go. It's all shrunken down on my monitor. Okay, so we're paused. And now if we go to the video tab, we get to see a readout of the video screen right in the debugger. And what we're going to do now is we're going to set some breakpoints. So what a breakpoint does is it stops the CPU when the program counter reaches a specific memory address. So to give an analogy in AppleSoft, like let's say you were troubleshooting a bug in AppleSoft, and you wanted to stop the program at line 200 because that was going to be helpful to know if the program got to that point versus it never reached line 200 and went somewhere else. So in AppleSoft, you might in line 200, put in an end statement to stop the program there. Breakpoints are roughly the machine level equivalent of that. So we're going to enter in 3 of them. And this, there's a menu here for breakpoints. Go to add breakpoint. It's important here to type in the $, otherwise it'll assume that you're typing in decimal. Just a tip there. 15 dB is the first one. This is the entrance routine to the attack command. And we'll put in 15FF. Don't know if it needs to be caps, but I'm not taking any chances. So this is the disk read routine that loads the combat setup program from disk into memory. 1608 is the call to the combat setup routine after it's been loaded from disk into memory. Whoops. I think I clicked reset there. Didn't mean to do that. 1608. Okay, got them all in. Okay, so in summary, what's going on here is I'm picking breakpoints that are along the path in memory that I anticipate the program counter traveling as it relates to the activities that I observed going on screen when the bug occurred. And this really comes down to knowing your program inside and out. And it's not really specific to time travel. All emulators with debuggers basically have breakpoints. So it's really a part of a general debugging set of techniques. And the advantage of time travel, to recap, is that it allows you to reproduce the bug so that you can apply general debugging techniques. Otherwise, general debugging techniques are pretty useless if you can't reproduce the bug. Now, when I say general debugging techniques, that is modern general debugging. In the 1980s, they would have had like printouts of the code, and I think actually had to read it or something. So, I mean, that's we're not going to do that today. We're going to take advantage of our advancements here and use time travel and use breakpoints. Okay. So now we got our breakpoints in. We're going to fast forward the recording and observe, do we hit any of the breakpoints? Do we hit all of the breakpoints? Do we only hit some of the breakpoints? And that's going to tell us more about where in the program the bug is. And I need to find the fast forward button. I'm not, it's rendering differently here with the screen size. It is not on the screen. That is interesting.
Shrink it?
I don't.
Command minus to shrink the font size. There.
Thank you, Chris. You saved the session. I don't think I would have thought of that. Okay. So here's our fast forward button. So if we click this, we'll see if we hit a breakpoint.
So Mark,
wait, I messed this up. Sorry, question?
Oh, I was just going to say, where are you fast forwarding from? Because you stopped it.
Right.
Okay.
I got to back up yet. I skipped the backing up. I fast forwarded further into the bug.
Okay.
So we need to rewind first and rewind to the point just before the bug occurred.
So is it automatically rewinding as you're doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. I'm not doing. You can adjust the rewind speed, but I don't want to do it too fast, or I can overshoot. Okay, I think we're way past the point at this point. Okay, so now we'll fast forward. The flash forward speed is adjustable. However, I've had best results using it on the lowest setting. Again, this is part of it's a emerging technology. Okay, we got the question marks, and we're blowing right past the bake points, and that should not be happening. So yet again, another example of this technology is an early state. What I did wrong, and when I say wrong, I mean wrong in the context of how to use the technology in its currently state. This should not matter, and will not matter, I'm sure, when things get developed further. When we found the bug, I hit fast forward. I should not have done that. There's no need to do that, which is probably why there's still a bug in Micromate lurking there. What I should have done is immediately done a rewind on the recording to go to the point before the bug. That's the scenario that's been focused on, that I've worked with April at Paleotronic to make sure that can be done, and I never once tried to fast forward into the bug before, so that's off into no man's land that nobody's really been troubleshooting on that. So, good example of where things are at if you want to actually do this. Those are a good example of things to be aware of. Now, obviously, we're trying to show here, the result, the positive result of all this. So we can still do that. When I'm doing this, in the course of daily work, I'll occasionally make a mistake like that as well, and it's not the end of the world. All it means is basically rebooting and reproducing the bug again, and then doing it correctly. So we'll go ahead and do that, and it'll go a lot faster this time. I'll just cut right to the chase. I was doing a lot of explanation before, so just bear with me a little bit. It won't take too long to do this again. And just for good measure, I'm going to actually quit the application and restart it. Back into the bugger to set our breakpoints. Oops, I've got to enable time travel first. Whoops.
By the way. You hit reset, so it's that one.
Okay, thank you. And honestly, that might have been enough to screw it up. We'll find out.
So you don't need to set your breakpoints now? You're gonna
No, I want to do those after.
Yep. Got it.
So now we'll pause. Now we back up in the recording. That's what we should have done before. Okay, so now we're at the point, actually I'm going to go back just a tad further. Question marks are gone. We've got the direction selector text on the screen, but I'm going to go just a tad bit before that. So I'm just going to put in 1 and see if I mess something up or not. So we should hit the first one. So I'm going to click fast forward to see if we hit the breakpoint, the first breakpoint that I entered.
Is this an actual bug you've encountered during development?
No, quite honestly, I made this one up just for the purpose of demonstrating, but it's a very plausible bug that could have occurred, and as it relates to showing the time travel stuff, it's perfectly sufficient. But conveniently, since I did insert it, I do actually know how to trigger it, so we don't have to wander around aimlessly. So I think I probably messed this up again. Probably because I didn't click submit on record CPU changes. Yeah, it's blowing past the breakpoint, and it shouldn't be.
So Mark, one quick question. So it'll hit the breakpoint even though you're doing fast forward. You don't have to hit play or something.
Correct. Don't hit play. I've not had good results hitting play. You'd think that it would play.
Yes.
But I don't go there. I use fast forward. So this, of course, adds a little bit of a dimension here in figuring out, okay, did my breakpoint not hit because it shouldn't have been hit, or did it not hit because I messed something up and bumped the wrong buttons and didn't do things in the right order? Nonetheless, again, we're comparing full days of work versus a few hours of work using the technology in its early state here of time travel. Okay, so apologize for the delay here, but we're going to do this one more time. Okay, whoops. Record CPU changes, submit. Time travel on. Continue. There's the bug. Pause the recording. Now we're going to rewind to before the bug. Okay, that's where I was trying to get to before the directional prompt, because then I know we're not in the combat attack routine at all. So now we'll put the breakpoints back in. We should be good here. Okay, so we got our 3 breakpoints in, the recording's paused. Now we're going to click fast forward and see what breakpoints we hit. Okay, so in the lower left it says recording pause by breakpoint at 15 dB. So we hit the first breakpoint, the entrance to the combat attack routine. So now we click fast forward again to see, do we hit the second breakpoint? And we did. At 15 FF we hit the second breakpoint, and that was the disk load routine to read the combat setup code into memory. And we'll click fast forward again to see if we hit the third breakpoint. No, we blow right past the third breakpoint, put question marks on the screen, and totally confuse the player. So that tells us, well, the problem is somewhere between the second breakpoint and the third breakpoint. What I would normally do at this point would be to set breakpoints deeper and deeper into the disk load routine for combat setup. Since that's where the second breakpoint was at the start of that. But I've done that work in advance for efficiency, and have identified the exact memory address where the bug is occurring. So we can just set another breakpoint and jump right to it to kind of see what it looks like. But first we'll rewind the recording to get back to the second breakpoint. So there we are, we're back at 15 FF, the second breakpoint. So now we'll put in '8394. Click fast forward again. Okay, so here we are, we hit 8394, and in the machine readout on the left, we can see at 8394, we've got an LDA 09, and in particular there, we've got at 8394, we've got that A9 opcode, the immediate mode opcode for LDA, and that should be an 8D, and I know it should be an 8D because the machine listing file says that it should be in 8D, the opcode for STA and absolute address mode. So the machine listing file is produced by the cross assembler, which shows the memory addresses and machine opcodes on the left, and the assembly language mnemonics on the right, and is a useful tool in this situation. But if it seems like, you know, kind of going through, looking for a needle in a haystack to find something like this, that's actually not too far off. But there are some ways to narrow it down. Like if I had encountered this bug in the wild, I would have, as mentioned before, after I saw that the third breakpoint wasn't hit, I would have gone back to the second breakpoint, set more breakpoints into the disk read routine for combat setup where the problem seemed to be. And I would have eventually noticed that the program counter had run away into a location of memory that didn't make any sense. Because where the problem is, this STA C009, that's enabling auxiliary bank switch memory, which wasn't happening because the value in memory was wrong. and that would make the program counter run away to someplace in main memory where it shouldn't be. So once I saw that, I would backtrack to the point where the program counter was in a place that made sense. I eventually would have remembered that, oh yeah, auxiliary bank switch RAM should be active there, and then check the memory state flags and notice, oh, it's actually not active right now. Traced backwards till I got to the instruction that should have enabled auxiliary BSR, which is the 8394. And then I would have sat there and puzzled for some unknown amount of time. Well, why isn't it actually getting enabled? We've got the command right there. And eventually I would have thought, oh, you know, I really ought to check what's actually in memory and see does it match what should be in memory per the machine listing file. And then, bam, I would have seen it as being different, and then gone throughout the process of tracking down, well, why? What happened? I was going to go into more detail on that, but for expediency here in session time, just suffice it to say that that process involves setting like a write memory trap to get the debugger to tell you when did that specific memory address change. That's something Micromate can do. I believe MAME can do it, memory traps, read-write memory traps. But that would be the next step to actually kind of pin it down. But let's continue on here with the rest of the session. I've got some updates on Nox Arcaist in 2019. Let's cut over to that. And I just have to find, I'm all out of order on my note cards. My apologies. Okay. All right, so let's talk about what's new with Nox Arcaist in 2019. First, I would like to thank everybody who supported the Kickstarter. It was an incredible success thanks to you. It's a thank you. Thank you. It's a great honor to be the first crowdfunded Apple II game that I'm aware of, and now we can all party like it's 1989. And so this is the final art rendering of the final cloth map that will be in the box set of Nox Arcaist. And I have a copy of that here. This is the final prototype of the map in cloth, and this is what will go to the printer here in a matter of weeks or a month to print off hundreds of them. That'll be virtually identical to this. And also the final prototype of the game box that the many hundreds will be based on. So I'm going to pass these around if anybody would like a closer look. Thank you, Chris. It almost was just a picture. Chris just got those prototypes ordered, and they miraculously came just in time for KansasFest, but I thought I might just be showing you a picture here. So fortunately that worked. Fortunately that worked out. Okay, so earlier this year we announced that we will have at least beta support for the Mockingbird, not Mockingbird, Mockingboard. There we go. So pretty excited about that, and many thanks to Eric Rangel and Tom Porter for their help getting that operational. Nox Arcaist was on several podcasts this year. Lost Sectors did a preview and a live stream of the alpha build, which has a large, fully playable area. They also did an article in Juice.js last December doing a compare and contrast on the Bard's Tale remastered games that had been recently released. They contrasted them with the original Apple II versions. Also did a interview on Spam Humbug, podcast of the Ultima Dragons. talked about game design differences and similarities with Ultima. A couple weeks ago was on Matt Chat that did a live stream, showed some more combat content. Talked a lot with Matt about interesting topics like the pros and cons of level scaling. Nox Arcaist has no level scaling, which we think is going to be a good thing. And if you'd like to find out why, it's in the Matt Chat live stream replay. And if you're interested in more details on the game, highly encourage you to check out all these different podcasts. There's lots and lots of details in there. So perhaps the most exciting thing to me this year was collaborating with Richard Garriott for Lord British to make an appearance in Nox Arcaist, which he graciously tweeted out on Twitter a few months ago. And people have asked what exactly Lord British's role in the game will be. So I'm not going to give everything away, of course, but I can say, or will say, that it will be more than a cameo. He'll be involved in at least one major plot point, and will guide the player in a variety of ways throughout the game. Nox Arcaist is a hard game. It's a large game, so I'm hoping that if the player is kind of swimming in clues, quests, and puzzles, that it'll be a fun mechanic to have the option to go talk to Lord British and maybe get a little bit of help on what to do next. So another question that has come up a few times is, can Lord British be killed in Nox Arcaist? Clearly Richard loves getting this question. So for my part, I can say that no frigates or lead plates will be allowed in his presence while he stays with us in Valley, the world of Nox Arcaist. I've actually studied and accounted for the loopholes that led to the unintentional ability to kill Lord British in some of the early Ultimas. So y'all can consider this a challenge. Give it your best shot and see if you can do it without hacking the binary file, Peter. So we're also going to give Richard the first box set off of Chris Torrance's assembly line, along with a certificate of appreciation, thanking him for his contributions to the Apple II and to gaming. And we got that certificate here, and it is titled From Your Friends at 6502 Workshop in KansasFest. So I'm going to pass it around if anyone would like to add their name or sign their name in thanks as well. Welcome to do so on the inside cover here or on the back. And also have a announcement here that after the 8-bit version of Nox Arcaist is released as a separate project and a separate product, we have formally decided that we're going to undertake a Nox Arcaist 2GS project, and thank you. And Burger Becky herself is going to lead the project and make it happen. Thank you. So, the 8-bit version, of course, will run on the 2GS, but the 2GS version will have the GS enhanced graphics and sound that all of us GS users know and love. So in conclusion, if you don't have the Micromate emulator and would like it, it's available at paleotronic.com. And thank us again, April and Melody, for your work on Micromate and getting time travel up and running. And thanks again, Tom Phelps, for pioneering the technology. I don't think I'd be standing here talking about it if it wasn't for you.
All right. Am I on? No. Yes. All right. Thanks, Mark, so much. I'm going to take my liberty to take here the first question. What if someone here didn't manage to back the Kickstarter? Is there a way that they can still order a copy of the game?
There is. We've got a pre-order set up on the website, noxarcaist.com. So if you'd like to take advantage of the pre-order discount, just go ahead and go to noxarcaist.com and click the buttons.
All right, we have time for maybe one quick question before the break.
Shut up and take my money.
Will do. I don't think that was a question. That was a statement.
Questions? All right, so thanks again, Mark. We have, oh, go ahead.
Did you get to the end of Wolfenstein yet?
No, I made it to Colonel. So after that is General, then Field Marshal. So I have to beat Colonel, beat General, and then beat Field Marshal for my quest here to be complete of reliving my childhood feat of winning on Field Marshal. But by the end of the week, I'm determined to do it once again. So.
All right, thanks again, Mark. So we have a break now until 10:15, and then we will resume with Ken Gagney talking about your 8-bit websites. Thanks.
Thank you.